of abundance. There's times when things are going well. And so we need to reflect upon those times. How did God work through those times? We're going to see as we go through, a lot of times we don't realize God's work, and we get through the rough times, and He's definitely going to work on us. The third is bad choices. Let's be honest with ourselves. We've all made bad choices, some horrible choices, maybe others little bad choices, but we've all made those bad choices. And looking through memories and things as I went through pictures this last week, it's amazing how a picture would come up and like, oh, that was a rough time. Yeah, ooh, that was a little bit time of rebellion. If you don't know this, I was quite the rebel. I still am, by the way. If you tell me not to do something, my first reaction is, ooh, I want to do it. That's just my personality. But there were times in life, looking back, that I went, ooh, there were some bad choices during this time. And we've all done that. Some people want to justify Moses. So here's what it is. Exodus 2:11 and 12. By the way, Moses at this point is 40 years old. Some people want to say, oh, he was just a young man with a temper. No, he was 40 years old at the time that this happened. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. Pause for a second. Remember, he was a Hebrew, so he saw his own people at this time. He saw an Egyptian beating Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Yes, this is the Moses that will lead the Israelite people, that will be the spiritual leader. And this, in his youth, I guess, 40 years old, makes this horrible choice to kill somebody. Now, you may say, oh, that's not choice, that sounds like manslaughter. But look closer. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian. This wasn't just a hot-head reaction. It seems as though this was a little premeditated, and he went after them. And then he went on and hid the body in the sand. When you consider the bad choices that you made, there's a few things that I think we need to be honest about. One is we need to remember them. We need to admit them. Let's not justify them, right? I mean, we do that. That's kind of how you live with yourself in a lot of your bad choices, right? You justify, well, I know I did that, but given the time and da-da-da-da-da. We need to contemplate upon those bad choices, reflect upon them, not make them again, hopefully. But it's okay to remember those bad choices, not to beat ourselves up. We have the forgiveness of the Lord, but to really consider, how did those bad choices, how did God use those to create who I am today, to mold me and to make me? So what did Moses do? What was his reaction? Well, through a series of events, the Pharaoh found out, so the Pharaoh went after him, and it says in Exodus 2:15, when Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian. So how did you deal with your bad choices in life when you were caught? Because that's what most of the time happens, right? If you don't get caught, then maybe it doesn't change very much. But when you get caught, when the repercussions come, what was your reaction? Did you run away? Did you deal with it? Most of us probably ran away in some form or fashion. Maybe you physically ran away. Maybe you emotionally ran away. Spiritually ran away. That happens a lot. We make bad choices but called you maybe on a daily basis. Maybe called you to be kind to this person, to give in this way, to do this to of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I'll go over and see this strange sight. Why does the bush not burn up? That's kind of strange in itself. I mean, I've taught this a lot to children over the years, but just think about that. There's a bush burning, it's not burning up, and off he goes to see what's going on. Verse 4. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. I feel like God would have a guttural voice. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And at this Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. It continues on, and God calls Moses to go back to Pharaoh, to go back and lead his people. And it took a little convincing. Moses complained a little bit here and there. But eventually, God convinced, through some signs and other things, convinced Moses that, okay, I'll go back and I'll be the leader you want me to be. God has called you and is calling you. Sometimes the calling in life you don't realize till later on. You look way back and go, oh, yeah, God was calling me to do this or to do that. So what happened? What happened is number 6, fulfill God's purpose. In life, most of us have had this experience. where we've been called by God to do something. We've answered that call. We've fulfilled God's purpose for us. And there is no greater feeling, not that our faith is all about feeling, but there is just something that stirs you within, that you know that God desired this for you and you followed through and did it. And so I imagine that Moses had these feelings even in the midst of his struggle. So what did he fulfill? What purpose did he fulfill? There's a long list here. He answered God's call. He went to the elder of the Hebrews and said, "Hey, we're gonna go tell Pharaoh we want to leave." I mean, you had to convince them. He went to Pharaoh, 80 years old. Probably had a stutter, is what they think. He mentions having some kind of speech issue. Went to Pharaoh, confronted Pharaoh. We have the 10 plagues God did through Moses, and it wasn't always smooth. In your life, looking back, consider that. Consider, when has God had a purpose for you, and when was that fulfilled? How does that make you feel? That's okay. How did you see God at work within your life? Maybe you're at a point right now, whether you're 12 years old or 112, that you can consider, what is God doing? Is God calling me to do something at this very moment? Now, here's the reality of life. Number 7, failure and consequences. Not that any of us have ever failed, but failure and consequences. Failure is part of life. It is part of life. And when we consider Moses, and we consider the great leadership of Moses, it was also full of failure. Not just the murder of us out of Egypt to deliver us in the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Here they're whining.